We've not taken a position on Amendment 2.
Okay.
But we did favor Matt Gates' legislation.
I think that you'll find that amongst all Florida sheriffs, and I won't speak on behalf of all of them, but I'll speak on behalf of the majority of them, that we as law enforcement believe, as humans, that we don't want people to suffer. We don't want people in pain. But there's a process, and there has to be a process by which you legalize controlled substances. And we don't think a constitutional amendment, especially one that's clothed in the kind of language and vague language that this is, I mean, this is a, you know, for lack of better words, the old pun or the old adage, this is a sheep in wolf's clothing. And the language that's up for interpretation that can't be regulated once it's passed as a constitutional amendment, I don't think Florida citizens will agree with it if they become aware of it. And hopefully that's what we can do, is help educate our citizens to actually what's in the amendment, what it allows, what it doesn't allow. Florida already has medical marijuana legislation that's been passed. I mean, the Charlotte's Web has been legalized. But if you, as a citizen of Florida, get a doctor's recommendation per this constitutional amendment, a doctor's recommendation is not a prescription. A recommendation also does not have any civil liability should he over recommend. So there's no frequency schedules, there's no potency schedules. There's none of that contained in this constitutional amendment. So a caregiver being 21 years of age is the only requirement for a caregiver. And so we're going to say whether you're a convicted felon, whether you're a former drug dealer, or whatever, you can now be a caregiver and have up to 5 patients that you can administer marijuana to. Do you understand? I mean, you guys see that not having a frequency schedule, say FDA approves a painkiller. We'll say Oxycontin at 5 milligrams or 7 milligrams or 10 milligrams. There's no such thing in this amendment regarding marijuana. The potency can be 2% THC or it can be 99% THC. It can be, there's no frequency schedule, so instead of your prescription bottle saying take one every 8 hours as needed for pain, this you can take all day, any day. A doctor's recommendation has no end date. None of that language is contained within the amendment. And that's what we're telling our citizens. And you tell them the polls and the counter polls on what Florida citizens know about this constitutional amendment, and it's almost nothing other than we're going to legalize medical marijuana. And that's the wolf hidden in sheep's clothing, that it's all about the medical marijuana patients and people that are disabled that need these medications to help them get past that disability or deal with that disability. And it's so much more than that. I don't think anybody's against helping people through their disability.
I just want to touch on a couple of elements that Sheriff Ashley said, and I think that are pertinent. Fundamentally, you know, as sheriff, I'm going to follow the company line. If it's the law of the land, that's what we're going to do. You know, I'm going to stand up and do what I'm told to do in regard to the law. I think what concerns me as much as anything is what Sheriff Ashley is touching on. Whether you are for or against medical marijuana, this is not just bad law; it's bad business in the way that it goes about from a regulatory standpoint. And you know, it's the pregnant pig amendment sort of issue, if you will, from constitutional. This should have been vetted in a legislative process where there are some control measures and some, you know, as much as we all hate government regulation, there is a time and a place for it, and this is a time and a place for it. Leaving this to arbitrary and capricious measures, and to use colloquialisms for just a moment, you know, you may go buy Afghan gold and somebody else buys Hindu Kush marijuana, different street names for these two brands of marijuana, that are totally and completely different in their potency. So, you know, self-medication is never really a good, you know, if you buy Tylenol, they'll tell you how many you should take in 2 hours. And to remove any liability just for the sake of legalizing, I just think is really poor public policy. So even if you are in favor, if you believe, you believe that this should be legalized either for personal use and or for medical, regardless of what your personal feelings is, this is not the way to approach it. This is really, really bad business in my opinion.
And you know, to see how things can get out of hand that's not controlled work for things that you really don't need. Look at our pill mills. Look at all the doctor shopping and stuff. Look how many people died from overdose from prescribed pills from doctors because there was no system in place to control it where they could go from doctor to doctor to doctor and get an enormous amount and either overdose, sell them, or sell them to people uncontrolled, and it ended up costing them their life. It was happening on a regular basis in our county simply because we had medical doctors over-prescribing. And of course the marijuana, all of us, and as Sheriff Ashley said, we're all compassionate when it comes to helping people in pain and a dreadful disease like cancer. But I think the legislature did a really good job under Representative Gates. There is a method in which you can get help. You can get it without the THC. So there is no issue now to go further with legalizing marijuana. It's not a medical issue. It's a money issue, and it's a way for people in the wrong places to get enormous amounts of money, and they could care less about their victims. It's all about money. So we can help people that need help when they have cancer or they have some kind of disease. We're in the process now of deciding who's going to grow the Charlotte's Web strand of marijuana. That will probably be in place in the next 3 to 4 or 5 months. So there is a method, so there's no need to go any further. As far as I'm concerned, it's a dead issue, and it's not about helping people.
So can you paint us kind of a picture of what, I mean, I guess your lives, you know, what law enforcement would look like differently if this was legalized? I mean, what's the kind of stuff that would be winding up in our paper on a regular basis, you know, and that would be a change from what we're seeing currently?
Well, I mean, I'm thinking of small things now, but you know, when you do canine walk-arounds of a vehicle and they alert to a drug, I mean, how are you to determine whether that's a legal drug they're alerting to? I mean, do you have probable cause at that point to search the vehicle as you do now? You don't. Because, I mean, if a dog alerts, you don't know that it's not medical marijuana in there, so you don't. There's a lot of, I mean, small particular issues like that.
If the vehicle
Let me give you one that will be on the front page of Northwest Florida Daily News about as quick as this happens this way. Will be the picture of Deputy Sheriff, X, Y, or Z, or Sheriff's Office employee, or Police Department employee. Should they be smoking cannabis the night before they come to work? Or should they be smoking on their lunch break because it's a doctor's recommendation?
You'll see, like in Colorado, a 55% increase in the number of juveniles using marijuana since they passed and legalized their marijuana.
in your hypothetical situation with a dog in the car,
Right.
if the car's driver can produce the physician certification, that'd be enough to get him off the hook?
Certainly. I mean, I don't think that if a dog alerted on a car passing this, that you'd have probable cause to search the car. I mean, there's just tons of reasons why you could have medical or marijuana smell coming out of the car. None of them illegal. I mean, my mother could own this car. She could have transported a patient. I mean, I can just think of a dozen reasons off the top of my head that would absolve anybody of having any responsibility for drug odor coming out of their vehicle. Or illegal drug odor.
And another thing, to interrupt for just a second, he's talking about the language being ambiguous. There's no age restrictions in the amendment. So if a 15-year-old kid wants to get medical marijuana, he can without getting his parents' permission. That's pretty vague.
Plus the impairment, we deal with impaired drivers on a regular basis. I think that'd just be another method for them to be impaired and say, well, I got a prescription, even if it's for pills, they're still not supposed to drive impaired. But it does make it very difficult for us to be able not only to detect what's causing it to be impaired, but also the prosecution side of it. It makes it very difficult.